Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Recently I've built a workbench for my shop, and while it's got a lot of features that I love, it was lacking just a little bit of functionality. I find myself using my hand sander quite a bit for the smaller projects that I do, and everything in the shop gets covered with dust. So I looked at a few downdraft tables, but they're big and they're bulky. I didn't really want to deal with more storage. And then it hit me. What if I build the downdraft table into the workbench? And that's exactly what I did. So if you want to see the steps that I took to build this downdraft table into my workbench, hang around, I'll show you how I did it. I've elected to build the downdraft table on the opposite side of the workbench from where my table saw is, just to minimize any interference between projects. Now you'll notice I've traced out a box that is 27 inches wide by 17 inches deep. And the reason for that is the downdraft panels are actually 26.5 by 16 3/4. So this gives you a little bit of wiggle room. If you're interested to see these downdraft panels, I've got links to those in the description below if you want to buy these and try to build it yourself. I've also got links to everything else that I've used in the project in the description below. Now you'll notice that I've had to bring this box about 4 inches into the table because of the 4x4 framing beneath the plywood. And what I'm envisioning is this to be recessed below the table, so when this is not in use, a piece of plywood, essentially with these exact dimensions, could be on top and covered, and the plywood would be flush with the table, so you don't lose the functionality of the table. That's the plan, at least. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start constructing the box, and I've got a design that I've sketched up that I think is going to work. But I'm going to create the box and with the air inlet on this side, because what I can do is I can take the dust collection hose whenever I'm not using the table saw and connect it over here if I'm doing any kind of sanding. So the dust collection port is going to be facing that direction. And then there's going to be a couple of baffles on either side that funnel all the airflow and all the sawdust into the middle, so that the airflow is channeled to help attract the dust towards the dust collector. Let's see how we go. So to start the creation of the box, I used 1/2-inch plywood to create the shell, and the base has the dimensions that we referenced before, 27 inches by 17 inches, and the box is going to be 8 inches deep. So I took the back panel where the 4-inch flange connection for the dust collection hose is going to be, drilled a hole out through the center, and then used a jigsaw to cut out the center hole. I've never done this before. I was a little bit intimidated by the cut, but it ended up being not that big of a deal. Once I had all my pieces cut, then I used a combination of Titebond 3 and brad nails just to get everything secured together. The box ended up coming together very quickly. Once I had the shell constructed, I then began to create the baffles inside of the box. And the reason for this is you don't want dust collecting in the corners of the box, and these baffles just help the airflow go towards the dust collection outlet. This step was a little bit unnecessary, but I had some leftover caulk from another project, so I just decided to run a bead of caulk around the edges and the seams just so that no airflow gets lost behind the baffles, and you've got maximum efficiency of airflow to your dust collection system. You can skip the step if you want to, but I decided to just go ahead and do it. With that completed, the next step was to build the rails that were going to hold the downdraft panels themselves. Now, the depth of those panels have to be flush with the top of the box. So the rails were set at about 1.25 inches, just low enough to where the downdraft panels would eventually be flush with the top of the box whenever this was completed. Make sure to take your time in this step. You want all the rails to be the same height, and you don't want your downdraft panels to stick proud once everything is completed. With the box created, now comes the point where you need to cut the actual hole into the workbench. If you have any doubts about this project, this is the point of no return, so make sure you're committed before you make the cut into your workbench. I started off by drilling 2 holes on 2 different corners within the workbench, and then I used a jigsaw to cut out the box that we had traced out before. I used a level here to help keep me straight on my lines that I was cutting. I would highly recommend this because jigsaws in particular have a tendency to wander whenever you're making longer cuts. So the level just helps keep your blade nice and true as you're cutting. I'm not sure if you can see it, but I've taken some scrap wood and I've propped up the downdraft table underneath the opening, and I'm going to find a way to attach it to the table. Now, I've thought about this for a while, and I don't think that there's a way around it without having some screw holes on the top of the plywood for the workbench. I've thought about gluing it, and I decided against it because I don't want this to be permanent. I want to be able to have the ability to change out either the downdraft table or the actual worktop itself. And if I glue it, I remove that option. So I think what I'm going to do is take a countersink bit and drill some holes around the perimeter, kind of along this perimeter here, and secure it to the ledge underneath the downdraft box. With the downdraft box now secured, I was able to put in the downdraft panels just to make sure everything fit. I'm really glad that I left a little bit of wiggle room in the clearance so that it wasn't a tight fit. That way I can remove the panels to clean the downdraft box if I ever need to. With that done, I went underneath the table to attach the 4-inch dust right connection hose and take this thing for a dry run. You can see here that it fits easily over the 4-inch flange connection that we installed earlier. Now, it's hard to show just how effective the downdraft table is, so I thought I would put a candle, blow it out, and watch the smoke get sucked back into the table. Kind of hard to see, but as soon as the dust collection system ramps up, all the smoke pretty much disappears. I also gave it a dry run on a cutting board that I've been making, and I've been really happy with it. Whenever the cutting board is lying face down against the downdraft table, the dust collection is really effective. However, whenever I stood the cutting board on end to sand the sides, I found that the dust collection was less effective because you're just taking that sanded surface too far away from the downdraft table. And there you have it. The nice thing about this design is whenever you're done, you can cover it with that plywood cutout, and now you've got your workbench back and you don't lose any of the functionality that you had before. And that's going to be it for this video. I hope you learned something, and if you liked what you saw, please give a like and consider subscribing if you're new to the channel. Also, if you're interested in building a downdraft table, I've got links to everything you need in the description below. Take care, and I'll see you on the next one.